Okay, here we go. Okay, so today is the yard site of two very chashuvi. First of all, Yisrael Salanter, the father of the Musar movement. Yisrael Salanter is known to be a big Bal Musar, but supposedly at the age of 10, he was already saying shiurim to older people, to rabbonim, because he was such a genius. And he ended up getting pushed into the Musar movement by his rebbeim. The other Yortzeit is not such a well-known person, but I think it's Rabbi Pergamansky. He was made famous by Rabbi Yisachar Frand. He was a genius of tells, and one of his famous Stigmach Torah is he always asks on Rashi that says that Yosef was sold to a caravan that rather than the normal caravans that were carrying things that were smelling bad odors, like tar, he was sold to a caravan that was not typical, that was smelling, that sold spices and sweet smelling things. So Frederick Rabbi Kamansky, he's being sold into slavery. The smell doesn't matter. Like, why is that the halal an issue? So Rabbi Kamansky said like it's a mushal. If a child is going into surgery, so his parents could take him to the reception, they could even take him into the triage, and they could even take him into pre-prep, into surgery prep. But when he goes into the actual operating theater, the parents can't come in anymore. The child is feeling like they're being abandoned by their parents and they're panicking. And then they look from the surgical table to the glass window in the door, and the child sees his mother looking in, watching him. And he knows, you know what, I'm going under surgery, but I know my mother's there, I'll be okay. So it was Hashem's peek in the window, letting Yosef know, yes, you're going to go through a hard time, but I got your back. I'll be there with you. That's one of the Torah Berbank says. But the famous story that Fran says about him, that is what made him famous, is he was once on a train with a Yid who happens to have been a Sheikhet in the Moyle, and they were traveling somewhere on an Arab Shabbos, and they got engrossed in the conversation, and they missed their stop. Because of that, it was very late Friday afternoon. They just had to get off at the next stop, and it was a city where there were as far as they knew, there was no Jewish community there. And this Yid, the Shaykh in the Moyle, was telling him, why would Hashem do this to us? It doesn't make sense. The Bava says, if Hashem wants us here, there's a reason for us to be here. We don't know what it is, but there's definitely a reason for us to be here. Anyway, they get on the train near the station, and they asked around by the people in the station, do they know of any Jew who lives in this village? So they said, yes, as a matter of fact, there's a Jew who lives in this village, and they pointed him to this fellow's house. They came to the house late Friday afternoon. They knock on the door, and the Yid answers, and he says, Shalom Aleichem. Who are you? What are you? So they said, we got messed up because we missed our stop, and here we are. Can we stay here for Shabbos? He says, can you stay here for Shabbos? Tell me about yourselves. So the guy said, I'm a Sheikh in the Moyle, I'm a rabbi. So he says, what? I cannot believe this. He said, my wife had a baby last Shabbos, and we had no idea how in the world we were going to be able to give this child a bris. And Hashem sent me to my door a moil and a santik. What more can I ask for? So Matcha turns to his buddy and says, you see, there was reason for us to be here today. So okay, so we're middle of the 5 Hanoim that Abaya listed that all hold that Shinui is not koina. So the last one we had was Beis Shammai, who says that an Esnan Zaina, that a Shinui was made to, according to Beis Shammai, it still is also. Of course, there's psukim that we use to prove it, and that is Haim Veloy Shinuyayim, even the Shinuyayim cannot be, I'm sorry, it's Gam L'Rabbis for the same, and Gam L'Rabbis Shinuyayim, meaning even their Shinuyis are still going to be usher to, even though Shinuyis are going to be usher to be brought to the Mizbeach. Which brought us to about 8 lines down on Daf Tzadik Dalam and Aleph, Rebbe Eliezer ben Yaakov. So Rebbe Eliezer ben Yaakov was a third Tana that Abaye claimed also subscribed to this halacha that Shinui is not kohen. The Tanya Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Areisha Gozal Saw Shalchit. Someone stole a saw of chitin. These are kernels. Tachna, he ground them. Losha, he kneaded them into a dough. Va'afa, and he baked them. V'hivrish mimena challah, and he's mavrish challah from it. Can he make a bracha, a moitzi lechem in the heart, on such a bread? Ketad nevarach. How could someone make a bracha on this type of bread? The pasuk says, I'm sorry, Ein Zeh Mevarach Alamanait. This is not called giving a bracha to the Rebbeinu Shloim, showing a karsha toiv that he gave us to eat. He's poking Hashem in the eye, Alamanait. He's chapping Hashem. He's making Hashem angry. Hashem doesn't need us to steal bread and then thank us. Someone who steals and then makes a bracha, needs Hashem. He angers the Rebbeinu Shloim. So you see from here that even though all these shinuyim were done on the davar hanigzal, the thing that he stole, it's still considered miyas by the Rebbeinu Shloim. And then comes Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, who will be the fourth Tana. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, Mahi. What is Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov's? Where does he say something about shinu nakoina? The Tanya Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Eimer. I'm sorry, Rabbi Shimon Elazar Mahi. I'm not Rabbi Shimon Elazar Mahi. Who's going to be the fourth Tana? Where do you see Rabbi Shimon Elazar says that shinu ain't the koina? Because it says kol shvach sheshbiach gadlin yodai al halyoy. Anytime the Ganav or the Gazlan improved what he stole, he has the upper hand in relation to that. What does that mean? When it comes time to returning the Xela, Ratza Noitel Shvachai, if he wants, he could say, I am retaining what I improved this product. Or Ratza Eimerloi, or if he wants, he could say, Areshal Chalafadam. Frank the Gemara, this comment makes no sense at all. My comment, if you improved it, how would you say Areshal Chalafanecha? Areshal Chalafanecha is a comment that's used when you've damaged something and you have a right to return it anyway, you say Areshal Chalafanecha. But if you improve something, the comment of Areshal Chalafanecha is inconsistent. My comment, this is what the Brisa means to say, this is what the Shimon Elazar means to say. Hishpicha, if you improved the object that you stole, then noitel shvacha, you get to keep it. But kichesh, if you made this, let's say, an animal weaker, you could tell the owner, Areshal Chalafanecha, this is your animal, and this is a good chazar. Why? Shinui b'mkoymoi oimei. Shinui means you're not koina, and therefore you get to give back something, even though it's weaker. Right, the Gemara, Shinu einoi koina is a two-way street. If you get to give back something, even though it's weaker, even if you improved it, Shinu is not koina. Why does he get to keep it? Gemara, he should not get to keep it. And if he improved the animal, he should be mechuyev to give it back. So why does he get to keep it? We want to make it easy for people to do tshuva. If he works on an animal, he improves it, and now he's forced to give back that increase, value that he improved the animal, it's going to cause people not to want to do tshuva. And therefore, the Baal Terabbanan want to make it very easy to do tshuva. They said that even though Shino and the Koina, if you improve an animal, you get to keep it. Rabbi Shmuel Mai. Now we have the final of the five. Rabbi Shmuel, where do you find that he says Shino Einoi Koina? The Tanya. Mitzvah's payah. There's a mitzvah of payah not to cut down your whole field, to leave over one edge of the field for a niyam to take. But the mitzvah is lahavish minakama, not to cut it down in the first place, to leave it for the niyam. But what if someone violated the niyam of payah? He still has to leave over some of the cut down stalks. What if he continued the process? My internet was wonky. What if he did not separate from Omer? Then mafresh minakri. Then he could even be mafresh from the pile of wheat that he already processed. That's until miruach. Miruach is the gemar malachas when you pat down the pile, and at that point you become a chuyiv and meiser. Morchai, he's still mechuyev in payah, but now he has an additional burden, ma'aser v'noiseloi. Now he has to take off meiser. And Rashi explains, normally when the oni gets payah, since it's Hefker Laniyim, there is no Chiv Meiser on it. But once a person made Miruach on his personal Tfuah, it now becomes Mechuyev Meiser. So if he gives that payah to the poor person, now that poor person will be forced to separate Meiser from it. That's not fair, because he was really entitled to payah that would not have a Chiv Meiser. Therefore, we force the Bailim to take off Meiser and then give the payah to the Ani. But Mishum Rabbi Shmuel Amru, in the name of Rabbi Shmuel, they said, Af mafresh mina isa b'noislai. Even if you've already processed the payah and you ground the kernels and you made it into dough and you baked it. I'm sorry, even if it's already dough, which is a full-blown shinui, it's a full-blown shinui, still b'noislai, you still have to give payah. So you clearly see that shinui is not koina, and it will not patter the grain, the produce, and now the dough from the chiyuv payah. So now that we've listed our 5 tanoim, Frank your papa the following kasha. Amalei your papa labai. Your papa has to buy. According to you, that basically all these tanoim are merely parroting Beis Shammai's halacha that shinui nekaina ich bil kol hani tanoi lashminik Beis Shammai. When all these tanoim went out of their way to tell us the halacha is like Beis Shammai, and normally people want to align themselves with Beis Hillel. Zaktabai, no. Amar lei harika amrina. You know what all these Tanaim are saying? They're not saying we're aligning ourselves with Beis Shammai against Beis Hillel. Shaloi aliba dehilchaza. Rather, they're saying is like nechalaku Beis Shammai uBeis Hillel b'davar. This that we know that there's a machlokes between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, if shinu koina or not, and we know that Beis Hillel shinu's koina. These 5 Tanaim are telling us no, there's no machlokes. Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel agree, and Beis Hillel does not argue with Beis Shammai in the subject of shinu koina, and everybody agrees that shinu einoi koina. Amarava, Fregdrava Mimai. How in the world do you see from these 4 Tanaim, in addition to Beis Shammai, how do you see from these Tanaim that they actually hold shinu koina? Maybe in each of their cases there was a special reason why it wasn't koina, but maybe real shinu is koina. But there's special exceptions for these 4 subjects, and Rava goes through them one by one. Where did Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda say that dyeing it does not make you kind of elabit seva? That's by dye, and maybe the dye that he was talking about, like the Gemara ended up telling us back then anyway, is a dye that will not hold fast, that in fact can be removed with detergent. You could remove it. Remember, the Gemara made a distinction between a dye that you could take out with detergent versus kalo ila, versus a very strong fast dye, similar to tcheles, that would never, ever be able to be removed. And that's what the Gemara said yesterday. The Gemara still died. Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda, that the ink or the dye was something that could have come out. So maybe really he'll shinu koina, but there's not a shinu because you can wash it out. V'yatkan loy kamer Beis Shammai also, and even Beis Shammai, in the place of Esnat, where he said that it remains also even after there's a shinui, maybe shinui is koina. But we're talking about bringing something for a carbon there, even with a shinui, mishum de imis, it will still be moist and mizbeach, but you don't necessarily see that shinui in the koina. V'yatkan loy kamer Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov also, Eliyim bracha. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says if you stole it and you made a shinui, it's still menayit to make a bracha. Yes, because the source of what you're making a bracha on is still Geneva. Mitzvah Bava, it's a mitzvah that came through an Avera. So that's why it's also, but not necessarily Kashinu Eina Kaina. V'yakan lekam Rabbi Shimon Elazar also, Elabek Chasha, the Hadar. Where did Rabbi Shimon Elazar say that it's not a Shinu if the animal became weaker? Yes, the animal became weaker, but you know what? You could feed it well, you could take care of it well, and it will return to its original strength. That's not really a Shinu. That's why he holds it's not Kaina. That's why he holds you could say a racial chalafadach. Yakan lekam Rabbi Shmuel also, Elin Peah. Maybe Rabbi Shmuel only said it to Gabi Peah. Really, Shinu is not koina. But by Peah, the Torah tells us that even if you made a Shinu, you still have to give the Peah. There's an extra pasuk. The pasuk in 2 places mentions the pasuk of Peah that you have to leave it over. And Rashi says it's both in Parshas Kedoshim as well as in Parshas Emor. It's in both places. The Torah repeats the la'ani v'lager tazav oisam, and maybe that extra tazav is what tells you that even though there's a shinui, when it comes to peya, you have to leave it for the ani anyway. But who said shinus goina? And if you want to suggest, okay, but maybe by peya it teaches us that even though there's a shinu, you're not going to. Maybe from there you can apply it l'chalat harakula. Maybe that's actually the source that you can spread l'chalat harakula the shinu in the kohen. Zoktima, you wouldn't be able to because matnas hanim shiny. Matna, you cannot bring a raya from matnas hanim to regular kanyonim. That shinu is kohen because matnas hanim are distinct. Why are matnas hanim distinct? The boy Rabbi Yonasan, because Rabbi Yonasan himself shows us that there's a distinction. The boy Rabbi Yonasan, my time with Rabbi Shmuel, he wanted to know what is the reason for Rabbi Shmuel, who holds even though there's shinu you made, you're still mechuyev in peya. Is it mishum dekashav shinu eina koina? Is it because he holds be'etzem shinu eina koina? Or dilma ba'alma kashav shinu koina ba'hacha mishum dechsiv tazav yiseir. V'im tiv taloymar time with Rabbi Shmuel mishum dekashav shinu eina koina. Let's stop a second. So you see from Rabbi Yonasan's shuva that he is not sure if you can apply what you learned by peya and matnas haniyim l'chalat harakula. He has a group of shayla, and therefore, just because we know by matnas haniyim that shinu is not koina, who said you can apply l'chalat harakula? So at the end of the day, all of these five shitas that Abaye suggested hold shinu in the koina. Rava says there might be a special reason in each case, and maybe you don't have a raya from these five tanoim that shinui einoi koina. So zok to Gemara, if in fact you hold across the board shinui einoi koina, then I don't need a special pasuk by peya to say that if I made a shinui, I don't have to give peya. By default, I don't have to give peya because shinui einoi koina. So by default, I have to give peya because shinui einoi koina. So I bezoi taziv yiseir because of Rachman Alamali. We were saying that from the extra taziv, that's how you know that by peya, which is not the saniyim, which is distinct, even though the shinu you still have to give it. If you hold shinu in the koina anywhere, well then you don't need a taziv. The Sul Rabbanan who argue in Rabbi Shmuel, who holds that the shinui, even by matnas haniyim, is koina, and therefore you won't have to give peya once you made it into a dough. Taziv yiseir the kos of Rachman Alamali. What do we learn from the fact that the Torah repeats the second time la'ani v'lager tazav oisam by peya? Zok to Gemara, no problem for that. We have a very important purpose for the taziv yiseir. The halach is, what happens if someone wants to make a kenunya and get out of giving matnas haniyim? So what does he do? He's mafker his kerem. I'm mafker kerem. Once it's hefker, it's part of the matnas haniyim. But he goes quickly to grab it back. V'hishkim leboiker, and quickly the next morning, under the false pretense that he already made it hefker, he went ubatroy and he started harvesting the grapes. Chayiv parrot, he's mechuyev in parrot, which is like peya, meaning you have to leave over some of the fruit. He still has to give parrot. His being mafker it did not help. He has to leave the smaller grapes there. Uveshikha, anything that he forgot, similar to what goes on in a regular field. Ubepeya, I'm sorry. So parrot did not. A peya is like a leket. Ubepeya, and he's upatim in a meiser, and he's part of a meiser. So you see, he's mechuyev in all of the matnas haniyim, even though he was mafker. The teretz is why, because Taziv Yisrael said these kenunya hefker that you're using just to get out of paying matnas haniyim, that will not work. That's what you learn out of the Taziv Yisrael. How come you're part of a meiser? Why does the Taziv Yisrael say you have to give meiser as well? The teretz is, it doesn't say Taziv Yisrael by meiser. By all of the matnas haniyim, Rashi shows that it doesn't really say the word tazoy the second time, but it's the halacha is redundant. There's an extra time where they're mentioned in the Torah. The only time you don't have that is by meiser, and therefore by all the matnas haniyim, even if you try to pull a stunt to be mafker it, and then you went right away to reclaim it, you'll be chayiv in all those matnas haniyim. Meiser, you'll still be part of it. Amar Rabbi Shmuel, Dr. Rabbi Shmuel. Halacha Reb Shimon ben Elazar. Halacha is like Reb Shimon ben Elazar. So let's go back. Reb Shimon ben Elazar was on our list, and Reb Shimon ben Elazar is the one that said, just going back over here a little bit. Reb Shimon ben Elazar said that the person who is not kashanah, if you steal an animal and it becomes weaker, you could say Arei Shalchal Lefanecha. Freit Gemara, we are Shmuel Achi, that Shmuel say that Shino is not koina, and you could say Arei Shalchal Lefanecha. So Amar Shmuel said, Ein Shaman, Loy Legana, Veloy Legazl, El Nazakin. Now, Lochi is, we know by Ezekiel, we learned it earlier in the Masechta, that the Nevela, my store shows someone else's store, there's a Nevela there. Who wants to have to deal with the Nevela to liquidate it? By Nizakin, we say the Nizik has to deal with the Nevela. So if the animal's originally worth 500, and now it's worth 100, the dead animal, the Nizik can't tell me, listen, I don't want to deal with the Nevela. You take the dead animal, give me a full $500. No, I can tell the Nizik, you got to deal with the $100. You got to deal with the smelly old animal, the Nevela, you got to liquidate it. I'll give you $400 to be mashal. That only works for Nizakin. But by a kind of a Goslin, if the animal dies or becomes weakened, the buyer would tell me, I don't want to take this weakened, this less valued item, and then you'll just give me the difference. No. You keep it, and you give me money to buy a brand new animal in a good condition like you stole it from me. So Zok Gemara, this is basically saying that if Ein Sham Alon the Gazna means Shino is kind of. So how could you say I can give back the animal that became weaker and say Rachel Chalafanecha? Shmuel said you can't do that. You got to pay the value of a brand new good animal. So Rava, Rava who diffused the whole thing, and Rava told us that in fact maybe Shino is kind of, and he said the only reason why you can give it back is to Shavim. I'm sorry. He said that when did Reb Shimon Elazar say you can give back an animal? That's only if it's not a good shinui, because you could fatten it back up. So then it's not a stira. Because Shmuel says that in fact shinui is kaina, and therefore the guy keeps the weakened animal, and that's to pay back cash in full. But if the weakness is something that can be reversed, even Shmuel agrees. Avad Reb Shimon Elazar holds over there, shinui won't be kaina. Then it's loikasha. Because Kika Amar Allah Reb Shimon Elazar, when did Shmuel say Allah Reb Shimon Elazar that Shinu's not kaina? That the Shinui became I made. That's only by Kasha the Hadar. That's by a Shinui that goes back, and therefore it's not a good Shinui. Kika Amar Shmuel also made Shaman lo Lagadna lo Lagazna el Nazakin. And when did Shmuel say that Shinui is kaina, and the guy has to pay for a brand new animal, and he's got to deal with the old weakened animal? That's by Kasha the Loyadar. That if the animal got weak, and it's something that the animal will not recover from, that's a shinui, and the vada he holds shinui's going. Elul Abaye, but Abaye told us that the Shimon Elazar's, the reasoning behind the Shimon Elazar halacha is because shinu ain't a koina. So Elul Abaye, the Amar Kik Amar Shimon Elazar b'chashed loyadar kamar. Abaye, who learns pshat in the Shimon Elazar, is that shinu's takanat koina, so it's a clear in Shmuel. Michael Amemar. What are you going to say? Shmuel b'ferish said shinu is koina. How could you say that the Shimon Elazar says shinu is not koina, and Shmuel holds like him as well? Zogt Gemara, Abaye mas nehachi. This is how Abaye will understand it. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Shmuel. So this is how he's understanding Shmuel's halacha. And now we're going to turn on to Daf Tzadik Dalet Amud Beis. Amru halacha Rabbi Shimon Elazar. They said the Veltzok. So what Shmuel never passed like Rabbi Shimon Elazar that Shinei Nekaina. Shmuel said the Veltzok that the halacha like Rabbi Shimon Elazar. But Velei loy svir lei. But Shmuel himself disputes that, and he held Shinui is Kaina. Amar Reb Chia bar Abba Amar Reb Yochanan. Devar Torah midayraisa Ksela hanishtanis chayzeres beinei. So Rabbi Yochanan is saying at first glance, it seems like Rabbi Yochanan is saying that Shinui ain't a Kaina. The Kzer that's nishtanis, you can still give it back. Shenema v'heishiv es Ksela shergozal. You just got to give it back, no matter what state or condition that it's in. Nikol Malkut. V'im Mishnah Seinu, and if you're going to ask a kasha from our Mishnah that says that you don't pay Caleb. El Demei Eitzim, right? We had our Mishnah says Gozal Eitzim wasn't Caleb. You only pay back to the Demei Eitzim. So our Mishnah seems to dispute that. Our Mishnah seems to say that Shinu is kaina. That's Mishum Takanas Hashavim. Meikadin, you're not kaina, and you don't have to give back to Caleb. But in order to help people to do tshuva, that's why our Mishnah says that if you improve the wood, you made it into Kalim, you get to keep it. Did Rabbi Yochanan actually say this? Rabbi Yochanan told us a general rule that we always pass like a Mishnah. Utnan, and we have a Stam Mishnah that says, well, here's big listener, if you didn't have a chance to give the ratio against the Kohen until you made a Shina in it, Potter your Potter, there's no Takanas Hashavim by giving ratios against, yet you clearly see that the Shinui Potters information against, that's a clear indication, in fact, that Shinui is Kohen. So how could Rabbi Yochanan tell us that really Shinui is not Kohen? Amalu Ahumi Rabbanon, one of the Rabbanon told us to answer this question. Rabbi Yaakov Shemei, and Rabbi Yaakov is the name of the Tana that's going to help us sort this out. You know, I'm going to explain Rabbi Yochanan's halacha. When Rabbi Yochanan said that my ikra din shinu is not koina, he wasn't speaking about a good shinui, because if I had a good shinui, he's moided at shinu's koina. But it's speaking about kagoyin shegozel eitzim meshupin vasam kelim. It's speaking where he stole eitzim that were already smoothed out, so no shinui is required to make them into kelim, because the havila shinu achos lebrasai. Yes, you can assemble the wood and make it into kelim, but that's not a good shinui. That could be dismantled, like we learned yesterday as well. And that's where Rabbi Yochanan said shinui is not koina only mipnei takanas hashavim. But a real shinui, avada, even Rabbi Yochanan would agree that shinui is koina. Tanu Rabbanan, we had this is a very interesting brayso. Hakaslonim umalvi beribis. So here we're not talking about someone who made a mistake one day and stole. We're talking about a career criminal, someone who stole all his life, or he regularly lent out money with ribis, and now he wants to come clean. Now he wants to do tshuva. So the halacha is, ein mekabel mehen. If they want to pay you back, you're not allowed to accept it. Now we do accept payments from gazlonim nowadays. So Tosfos tells us that this was a takana only be mei Rebbe. But I'll call upon them, even if they want to return, you cannot take it back. And if someone does it, someone was stolen, can you imagine you had a guy who stole $1,000 from you, he wants to come pay you back. If you accept the money, the Chachamim are not happy with you. This takana was only for the times of Rebbe. The Tanya we learned, there was once a story with somebody, he was a career criminal, and he wanted to do tshuva and give back all that he stole. His wife told him, Reika, are you stupid? Are you empty in your head? If you're going to pay back all those people that you ripped off, your own belt, your own underpants you're going to have to give away, because everything you have is stolen. You're a crook through and through. Every penny you have is a product of your theft. And you know what happened because of that? You know what? You're right. So since we see someone who was going to do tshuva didn't do it because if he was afraid he won't have any money left, that period of time, they said, only for that period of time, I guess things were problematic in those days. You are not allowed to be mekabel from them as the victim. You're not allowed to take back their pay. Break Gemara Meisvei. I'm going to prove to you that that's not true. There's no such takana. Because what if someone died and he left ribis, money that he took wrongfully, and his children are yashing this ribis? Even though the children know that this money is ribis, the children don't have to return the money. Only the children, don't have to return it. If the father was alive, he would have to return it. So you see, not like the takana. You see, not like the takana that he can give it back. So that's Gemara. No, Bedinu de Avim Nami Ein Chayav Lachzer. Avada, the father doesn't have to give it back either because of this takana of Rebbe. So why did the Brayso just say that the children don't have to give it back? The Brayso should say a bigger chiddush. Even the father doesn't have to give it back. Mishum the kaboil misna seifa, because of the next case where it would be parallel to refer to the children. Because the next case is hinich lemavim para v'talis b'choldavar masuyim. What if the father didn't just leave them money that's not identifiable, but he left them something that everybody knows this was Chaim's car who he stole from, this was Beryl's para who he stole from, this was Shmerel's palace who he stole from? It's a lasting testament, a bezoyin to the father that everyone's going to say, everyone's going to remember the father as the God because of these items that everyone identifies as belonging to the victim. Then chayav and lahachzer mipnei kavod aviyim. So since he wanted to give an example of a case where the children do have to give back something, the Reisha gave an example of a case where the children don't have to give back something. But Avad the father wouldn't have to give it back either because of Takonas Hashav. I don't understand something. If they covered Avim, their father was a Rasha. He was a Ganav, he was a Malva Barabbas. They have to worry about his covet. Why don't you say Ikri Khan, Benasi Ba'amcha Loisar, Amcha? When do you have to have respect for a Nasi and your parents and anything else? That's if they that if they behave like a good Jew. But if they don't behave like a good Jew, you don't have to be worried about them. So why is it that we're worried about the covet of this man if he's a we're talking about a man who before he died, he did tshuva. Achanami, in our case, will say, since he did tshuva, now we want to protect his name, and therefore we are going to give those things back. If the man did tshuva, my boy gabe. So why are these assets still in this man's possession? Why is it that the kids have to deal with these assets? If the father did tshuva, he should have had already returned it. And for the Gemara, leave it up, please. He didn't have chance to do tshuva until he died. So therefore, he did tshuva. He wanted to give it back. He couldn't give it back. Therefore, the children have to give it back. Zok to Gemara, Tashma. So we're going to bring another raya. Hagazlanim umalvi beribis avabisha govu machzirin. Even though they already took, they're machzir. So what does it mean gazlanim? Even though they already took, that's what a gazlan is. He took gazlan mashagovu ika. Doesn't make sense. The mashagovu in reference to gazlanim. Gazel. If they stole, they stole. V'loy gazel, loy gazel. What do you mean? What they already took? If they're a gazlan, by definition, a gazlan has already taken. Aleima gazlanim. Gazlanim. What type of gazlanim am I referring to? Umayniu malva beribis. So we're identifying malva beribis as a type of gazlan. If a person was a malva beribis, that's the type of gazlan he was. Ava pisha govu. Even though he already, he didn't just write a star that was mechayiv eloibu with ribis. He actually has already collected the ribis. Machzir, and he has to give back the ribis. So the problem is, if you're telling me there's a takon of Rebbe that you don't give back because of takon of Sashavim, so how could he give back? How come the Bride says he has to give it back? Zok Gemara will fetch and will say, Amri Machzirin, yes, they have to try to give it back, but the Ein Makabel man. But the victim may not accept that payment back. So why are they trying to give it back? Is it a game if they're not taking it? The Tejas losses to the Shemaim. They have to demonstrate that they're trying to do tshuva. Tashma, Haroyim, shepherds who are considered crooks because they regularly allow their animals to graze in other people's properties. We're also going to see on Amid Aleph that shepherds also sometimes they take advantage of their animals that are in their care. They will shear some of the wool and steal it from the owner. So Royim have a bad rap. The Gaboyim are people who collect taxes or they collect tzedakahs. Rashi's Gaboyim shall melech ligvoitz kesef golgolta varnuna. They take head taxes, but they would often extract or extort more money from the people that they are charged to take money from than they're allowed to. Muksin are people who charge duty by the border. Shuvas and kosher, they have a real hard problem doing shuva because they have robbed so many people. How in the world, and they don't even have their identity of all these people, how are they going to pay everybody back? So what do? Umachzirin lemakirin. But they do have to pay back those people who they remember, who they know they ripped off. If there's a takon sashavim that they don't have to give it back, according to Rebbe, I'm sorry, why do you give it back? And for the Gemara, yes, they make an attempt to give it back, but the victim is not supposed to accept it. So why do we tell them to give it back? So if they could give it back, why is it Shuvas and Kosher? What's the problem? It's not Shver at all, because they don't even, it doesn't even cost them anything. Look at the Seifa. What about the victims that they don't know? How are they going to pay those people up? You know what they should do? They should do public good with their money. They should donate mikvahs, they should donate wells and boyers so people could drink. Do things that the public will have benefit from, and hopefully their victims will have benefit from them. Which are public places where they could get drinking water from. So in fact, you see that they have to pay back. So there is no takana that Rebbe made that they don't give it back. And like Kasha, you're gonna have to they can't kodim takana kan lacha takana. All the brises that we have that say you give it back must have been before the Rebbe's takana. And Rebbe's halacha that you don't give back is after the takana. And now the Rab Nachman said, B'she'ein gzela kayemes, we're speaking about where the gzela is not around anymore. Then afilu tema idi v'idi la'achar takana. You could even say that both brises are la'achar takana. So why in some places is there a takana not to give it back, and some places they are? V'loy kasha, it's not shver. Going on to Daf Tzadik Hey Amud Aleph. V'loy kasha. Kan gzela kayemes, kan gzela she'ena kayemes. So if the actual gzela you took is actually still there, then you have to give it back. But if you don't have it, you liquidated already, then there'll be the takana sashab. Remember that story with that prompted the takana? This lady told her husband that if you pay back your victims, you're even going to have to give away your gartel. Now, your gartel is something that's the gzela kayemes. That's what he stole. So if avnet gzela kayemes, what? How could you say there? How could you say over there that there's a takana? We said if the gzela you have to give it back. You see that the takana was made specifically because of that avnate, that he shouldn't have to give it back. Dr. Gemara, my avnate, the may avnate. What does it mean, avnate? It means the may avnate, which I guess it means that he bought, not that he actually had an avnate that was stolen. It means he bought avnate with stolen money, but it's still not there anymore. The gzela kayemes. Are you telling me that whenever the gzela, the actual gzela is still there, there's no takana, and we say he has to give it back? A beam. The gzela kayemes. If you have a beam that a guy steals a beam and he puts it into his house, that's gzela kayemes. Utnan ala meirish hagazol shabane bebira. If you built a beam into your house, shayitel damav. He doesn't have to give back the actual beam. He could give it back al takana sashavim. He could pay the money. Mipnei takana sashavim. So Gemara shiny hasam. The kivan the ika pseida the bira. If he pulls that beam out, the whole house is going to crash down. It's going to cost him so much more money, and it's going to cost so much more damage than just the value of the beam. Shaviu rabbanon kedalesa. They treated it as if it was not around anymore, and they said that all he has to give back is the money. Okay, so we will stop here, Be'ez Hashem, and we will be mamshech Be'ez Hashem tomorrow. Everybody should have like a bench today. Shkoyach.